And now, with a great pleasure, I would like to introduce Stefano De Crescenzo of ENISA. Please, the stage is yours.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you, the organization, for inviting ENISA for the second year. Today I heard two keywords, cooperation and coordination of the response. And in the next minutes, what I would like to explore with you is how this cooperation and coordination happen outside of the border of the member state and within the context of the European Union. Now, the cooperation with the community, it's so important that it's within the ENISA mission. And the ENISA mission is to achieve high level of common cybersecurity across the Union in cooperation with the community. So the cooperation and the need for a coordination with the communities, including member states, it's at the center of our action to increase the level of cybersecurity. Now, in order to understand a bit how those mechanisms in terms of crisis management and crisis response works at the European level, we need to keep in mind three main pieces of legislation. The most important one for ENISA is called CyberSecurity Act. Within the CyberSecurity Act, Article 7 talks about operational cooperation and gives the mandate to ENISA to operate and enable operational cooperation at Union level. The second very important piece of legislation is the NIS directive and the recently released NIS 2. This piece of legislation, among many other things, also gives ENISA the mandate to act as a secretariat for two important communities. I would say probably the most important communities that we have at European level when it comes to technical and operational monitoring and response of cyber threat. Those are CISR Network and Cyclone. And the third one is what is called blueprint. What is the blueprint? The blueprint sets the framework and the workflow on how a cyber crisis responds and what the actor should do when a cyber crisis hits. So it maps exactly what are the steps that those actors that we will see in a minute will need to take. It also introduced a very important concept, which is the concept of large-scale cross-border. Why is it important? Because the member states have the responsibility to act on cyber attack impacting their own territory and their own businesses and their own constituency. The concept of a large scale is when ENISA and other EU institutions may also play a role when such an attack is so large spread that impact more than one entity or more than one member state. I heard before the word attack have no boundaries. In many cases, that's actually true. So in many cases, many of the attacks that we witness nowadays have this connotation of large-scale cross-border. Now, when it comes to EU crisis response, at highest level, the whole mechanism goes into something called integrated political crisis response, which is a mechanism that sits within the European Council, which gets activated not only for cyber crisis. It's a general mechanism that deals with all types of crises. Lately, though, cyber became a key component of, in fact, any crisis. Let's remember that at EU level, the Russian aggression to Ukraine is identified as a humanitarian crisis because of the refugees that at the beginning of the war were flowing to Europe, not as a cyber crisis and so on. On the other hand, every time IPCR gets activated, there is a cyber component that goes into that. Now, who are the main players when a union declares a cyber crisis or monitor or manage a large-scale cross-border event? We mentioned one very important, the CISR network. The CISR network is also represented within the European context by the Agency for National Cybersecurity, so ACN in case of Italy. And it's a collection of national CISRs that cooperate together in order to monitor and respond to events, incidents, share information, and when and if there is a crisis or a large-scale cross-border incident, they activate mechanisms and procedures in order to tackle this crisis. The second level, which is more operational level, it's made and done by a community called Cyclone. What is Cyclone? Cyclone is a collection of national authorities that deals with cyber crisis management at national level, which collaborate in a similar network, in a similar framework as the CISR network in order to respond to a crisis. And then finally, at political and strategic level, the highest level that a crisis can be escalated, it's within the European Council. Typically, the operational work is done by what is called horizontal working party for cyber issue, where the delegates from all member states discuss the political response, if any. This is the competence of the member state. So how the EUBA, European Union institution, bodies and agencies play a role here? The main and the critical role that we play is typically to support those workflows and those response, providing, for example, help with coordinated response, with situational awareness, and with common messaging. Now, who are the players at European level that play a role within the crisis response? Well, of course, ENISA, but we are not alone. We are together with EC3, Europol, specialized on cybercrime. CERT-EU. CERT-EU is the CERT of the EU institution, bodies, and agency. So it's a technical department representing the community of the EUBAs. We have EU-INSEN, which is the component that collects through the member state intelligence information that then are used to brief the council about specific issue. Before it was mentioned something about attribution, for example, if the council wants to make a sanction in the context of a cyber response, this is done together with INSEN and another entity called External Action Service. And then finally, the Commission, when it comes especially to the effective response and measures that the European Union can put at the disposal of the member state in order to respond to a cyber crisis. Now, another concept that is very important that I introduce is the support. So what ENISA and other EU institution, bodies, and agencies do, it's supporting the member state. We do not replace the action of the member state when it comes to cyber incident response or crisis response. When it comes to ENISA, we act primarily about 8 services that we provide to member states. One of the most important services is the Secretariat for CISR Network and Cyclone. It's not just about administrative support, but it's also about managing the secure infrastructure where this information exchange can happen. The second important role is the contribution to common situational awareness. What we have within ENISA is a strong cell of cyber threat analysis and information and collection that contributes to the information that member states have in order to create this common picture when it comes to situational awareness. And recently, another program that we started within ENISA is to actively support the action of prevention and response of the member state together and supported by private sector entities. So we talk a bit about the Secretariat. We have those 2 networks that are very important, that are the center of the crisis response. Another very important thing when it comes to response is testing that actually everything that is there in order to then respond to a crisis, it actually worked when the crisis hit. So ENISA has, for I think more than 10 years, organized one of the leading EU exercises called Cyber Europe, where together with all these communities, so CISR Network and Cyclone, we test our ability, so our collective ability, our union ability to actually respond to cyber crisis. We did the last exercise in June of last year. The topic was healthcare. And let's say the exercise is organized together with the member state. So the topic is typically discussed with another group that I didn't mention before, the NIST Cooperation group, that also play a good role within the organization of the cyber resilience and response at union level. When it comes to situational awareness, as I said, within ENISA, we have an engine that provides primarily 3 types of services. We collect information coming from open source and closed source, to create an idea, information on facts and figures that we can use to understand what are the trends, what's happening out there. We do this more at operational level, so on a more fast pace to understand what's happening now. That is, for example, the case of the Russian aggression to Ukraine. We are on every day providing information to different entities, including CISA Network, Cyclone, at political level as a part of this IPCR mechanism. We do also threat and incident analysis, as well as we provide operational risk evaluation and guidance. One of the most recent work that we did it together with CERT-EU. It's a joint publication about increased level of threats by specific threat actor, which I invite you to read. And finally, this is a pilot that we are running since August last year, together with the member state. So we are providing direct services to different beneficiaries that have been identified by the member state in order to help boosting their resilience. So we provide different type of services, ex ante and ex post. So ex ante are more services that help boost the resilience and the preparedness of those beneficiaries in order to cope with cyber attacks. And then ex post, meaning we help and support the incident response of the beneficiaries or alternatively of the national CSIR to respond to incident and cyber crisis. Thanks a lot.
E ringraziamo Stefano De Crescenzo, grazie mille per averci illustrato le attività dell'ENISA, l'Agenzia per la Cyber Security dell'Unione Europea.